You're listening to WKDW Radio 97.5 and KDWRadio.com, broadcasting from the Bishop West Real Estate Mobile Tower right here in Northport, Florida. I've got a huge amount of people on the show today, so I'm going to start out with Mr. William English. Introduce yourself, Chuck, and let everybody know who you are.
My name is Chuck English. I've been a resident of Northport for over 40 years, and my concern is the health, safety, and welfare of the environment of our community, especially those that are getting up every day and building it, and the people that provide the services for them to do it. That's me.
Awesome. Carmine.
Hi, I'm Carmine Miranda, and I live in Northport. It's been 10 years, my wife and I. We find Northport to be a beautiful location, beautiful environment, a great community, and we just want to see it thrive. And what we would like to see come together to solve problems without any political background or without any vitriol, just all work together. And we have a growing city, a young city of 64 years, and we all have a voice, so let's use it appropriately.
Barbara.
Hi, everybody. I'm Barbara Lockhart. I'm the current president of a local nonprofit land conservancy called the Environmental Conservancy of Northport and surrounding areas, because we are working on obtaining parcels in neighborhoods of Northport and surrounding areas for conservation.
My name is Peter Bartalotta. I've been a resident since 1993. Active in the community with the Northport Arts Center, the Vision Northport Economic Development, bunch of nonprofits, and I just believe Northport, it can be a phenomenal. It is a phenomenal city, and I'd like to see it continue to be that.
And Robin.
Hi, my name's Robin San Vicente. I'm a wildlife and environmental consultant. I specialize, and my main focus is the Florida scrub jay and the gopher tortoise. I'm also a community advocate to reach the commission and any other organization for the benefit of the citizens of the city of Northport. I've been a resident in the city of Northport for about 20 years and love it.
Bill Gunnin, you there?
Yes, sir, I'm here.
Go ahead
Can you
and
hear me?
give a quick introduction of yourself.
Yeah, I apologize. For some reason, I didn't have this on my calendar. So, yeah, I'm Bill Gunnin. I'm the executive director of the Northport Area Chamber of Commerce. I have been with this organization for 13 years. And pretty much we are a growing chamber and growing community, and we're just trying to meet the need.
We're going to have a round robin conversation. I'm going to give everybody about a minute to answer questions.
I'm losing you.
That's all right. Hang in there, Bill. I'm going to give everybody about a minute to answer the questions. I'm going to start out with Mr. Chuck English. Chuck, what do you envision Warm Mineral Springs being like from your point of view right now?
I guess the perspective I have is the one that was put forth in a memo by the commission in 2015, which put together the 2019 master plan for Warm Mineral Springs. There was a strong consensus that was a balanced plan that fulfilled the needs at that time of the community, and is probably the focus of the whole conversation. And for me, it's the maximum density that's trying to be achieved by the P3 that's proposed.
And Carmine, what do you see as far as a vision that you've kind of planned out in your head and would like to see happen at Warm Mineral Springs?
My vision is the way it is now. It needs a lot of work, and I'm looking at, having utilities. I'm looking at having the buildings condemned and demolished, Actually, the building's rebuilt to hurricane standards. And also, there's an issue with the cold water that goes into the springs. They say it's running at 50%. I think a lot of the houses in that area need to be converted to public water and sewer. I don't necessarily want to see a P3, but we all need to consider the things that are needed. How are we going to pay for them? That's the big issue.
Okay. Barbara, same question. What do you envision and what do you see happening at Warm Mineral Spring?
What I would love to see happen at Warm Mineral Springs is that it be embraced and utilized as an ecotourism destination more than anything else. Aside from the springs and the 20 or so acres around it that's being called the conservation area, which really is a little misleading, in that what that I understand means is you can't build in that area directly around the springs. There's 62 or so acres of absolutely beautiful natural community, pristine, untouched land that already has trails that could be opened up to the public and created into something similar to a Florida State Park. I've got data that I've shared with the city that shows how extensively profitable this type of concept can be. Florida State Parks are doing it all over the state. And so obviously I come from conservation standpoint, and my objective is to utilize the 2019 plan, blow it up into an ecotourism destination, and start focusing on what the land can do instead of brick and mortar, what the land can bring to the people and to the city coffers, because I think it's possible.
Okay. Peter?
Yeah, to some point,
Go ahead.
Okay. I think it needs to be a focus on preserving the springs, without a doubt. That's number one priority. If that is jeopardized, then nothing else works. I see it as ecotourism, but Barbara, in order to have ecotourism that typically, in my mind, it thinks revenue. Well, where do you get revenue from a park? Parks are usually the first thing that closes when times get bad financially, when they're run by government. So I'd like to see it self-sustaining, a focus on health and well-being, and have public access, and probably a boutique resort, maybe 100, maybe 200 rooms, but very sustainable.
And I'll go over to Robin now. What do you envision there at the park?
I'm kind of in line with Barbara, I would say. Speaking not just for myself, but the community at large. The 2019 park-like master plan suits me fine, suits the environment, safeguards the springs with the less weight and the less drilling and boring that goes into that karst topography. That's number one major concern. Additionally, yes, we do need some kind of commercial entity, a boutique hotel, but that can be achieved at the parcel on 41 in Ortiz. We don't have to put all that weight, on the Springs property and jeopardize the topography and jeopardize the spring, which is a domino effect. So the least amount of weight, the least amount of development on that parcel, the more nature-based activities that we bring in is my vision and the community I represent.
Awesome. So I'm going to start out with Peter on this one. How do you think the city should look at paying for? And I kind of gotta group the things together. Warm Mineral Springs overall needs a lot of work, and it's been neglected for decades. So Warm Mineral Springs, as we know it today, really needs a big facelift, and a lot of money injected into it. Peter, what would you say is the most effective way to do that without costing taxpayers?
Okay, well, first of all, everybody talks about the 2019 plan, and it's a good plan, but understand why we're where we are today. The city can't afford it. That's why they went to a P3. So it's nice to say that's what we want, but at what cost? So the reason what they're looking for is how do we generate a public-private partnership or something to make this work? And I envision a small boutique resort. I see it a very and I see it upscale. You want to attract as expensive a hotel or resort as you can get, because that's going to be the more revenue for the city. And Robin, I agree on 41, that can be a hotel. You'll get surrounding areas will build hotels that will support the resort. A lot of your national parks have resorts on them. Okay, that's the focal point. Those are your most expensive rooms. It's like going to Orlando and staying on a Disney property or staying on, in Kissimmee. So
all right. Well, hold right there. Hold right there. Hold right there. You can come back to you. Barbara, I'm gonna put that same question to you with what you envision with the Warm Mill Springs and the park outside. How do you see it being paid for without being tax dollars?
Okay, well, first I'll say that a couple of months ago, this Parks and Rec director presented a plan to the commission utilizing the $9 million already on hand in steps to do various uplifts and upgrades and repairs to all the buildings. That was dismissed by commission in about a 20-minute meeting. So I feel there is a way to use what we have on hand to initiate repairs, take things in order. Why does it have to be done now? What's wrong with just taking it in steps, using the money that we have, and then pulling from the income that the Springs generates, which was about $1 million last year, I understand, net, and just proceed like that, a step at a time, a step at a time, a step at a time, while also opening up the existing acreage to tours, camping, all sorts of events, similar, like I said earlier, to the Florida park system. And a lot of these parks have most state parks have no brick and mortar of any kind. And they generate hundreds of thousands of dollars into the millions, some of them every year. So that's use what's there to the best of our ability without paving it over. Awesome. And use what we have already in the coffer. Yep.
Very good. Very good. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. I'm going to go over to Robin real quick. Robin, what do you see happening here, and how are you going to kind of hopefully get it paid for?
Well, I'm kind of in agreement with Barbara and Peter. Barbara, absolutely. The park-like plan, the nature-based ecotourism activities generate millions of dollars just from bird watching alone. Additionally, yes, we do need some kind of commercial entity. However, if there's a P3 that the city is looking at with this developer, shift his focus from One Mineral Springs parcel and shift it up the road to 41 and Ortiz. The city already has plans for the sidewalk gateways, which is what we would need. They can get the money from the federal government and the state to help pay for the wastewater, which actually there was a bill introduced years ago for that wastewater extension, as a matter of fact. And then that was withdrawn. Don't know why it was withdrawn, but it was. So there are many ways to pay for it, and there's many ways to come to an agreement with the developer and shift his focus off the parcel and go up the road. There's plenty of commercial space available on 41.
Carmine, I'm going to ask you the same question. How is it paid for, and how do you envision that happening?
Well, what I've been hearing as far as having some sort of a commercial entity, I agree that it shouldn't be property of the Springs. What everybody's saying. I had documented a couple of different ways to pay for it. I'm going to leave the raising the millage rate or raising the admission fees, and I'm going to go to something that I think should actually happen. If the Springs falls apart, that's not only on the city of Northport, but that's a blight on Sarasota County as a whole. So, you know, I would like to see maybe the city going back to the county and trying to form that partnership instead of a P3, and see if, you know, even if there's an ad valorem increase, everybody pays $40. You're looking at a population in Sarasota County of 402,373 people as of 2022. You times that by $40, you're looking at 18,000, almost $18,100 or $100,000. That combined with the 9 million, I should say 18 million, and the 9 million the city has, you're now looking at $27 to get your buildings rebuilt to hurricane standards, to get water,
All right.
sewer, and to the site.
I'll come back to you. Chuck, how do you see it being paid for? And do you have any idea of how to position that? Are you muted, Chuck?
You're muted.
Not able to hear you, Chuck.
I can hear you.
Ah, can you hear me
Go ahead,
now?
Chuck.
There you go.
Okay. I tend to agree with Barbara and Robin and Carmine. They're pretty much saying the same thing, that everything should be done in phases as the plan called for before. For the water and sewer, we have to go to the P3 at some point, because that's what the mechanism that's driving the whole issue is, the P3, which is basically designed to maximize the density of the area in order to run the lines there, so the property across is being considered for annexation, and A7 down the road is scheduled to put a hotel on. So as far as the impact of the area, it all depends on the maximum density they're trying to establish with the P3. It's not about the P3. It's about maximum density. That's my.
All right, very good. So I've got one person out here that's chiming in online, and you know, there's been a couple people look at this property in the past. It's if the city didn't own it, it would have already fallen apart, as it has anyway. Even the city has had trouble addressing some of the issues that are out there. Barbara, I understand that the city has $9 million in the coffer. Now, I did do some research on whether we actually are making $1 million a year. I think that's a farce. I think when you look at a budget totality, you've got to look at the maintenance. You've got to look at grounds and maintenance. They've shifted that off into another category. So the number of $1 million is really kind of inflated. If we were looking at this as business-minded people, okay? So city numbers and business numbers kind of don't work out the same way. If we're trying to keep taxpayers from paying for the park as a whole, and I understand exactly what you're saying and how it can generate money, but do you think it can really sustain itself? Just being a park without having really more than just steps into it, stages.
Well, I would think so, based on just what I know on other state parks around the entire state. They all sustain themselves in different ways, but a lot of them are, I'll give you Myakka River State Park for an example. What do they have there besides camping, a restaurant, kayaking, and hiking? I mean, they're so successful that the amount of population that goes there is off the charts. Now, not to say we would have that same thing. It's a smaller park. It's a smaller area. But my feeling is open it up to the people and they will come not only for the spring, but for the hiking, for the birding, for the camping, for the outdoor activities, none of which is offered anywhere else in the city. So why would we take this pristine piece of land and pave it over for a spa and a hotel and a restaurant and other concrete amenities you can get down the street? You can't get Warm Mineral Springs and the land around it down the street, but you can get all these other concrete amenities down the street. So over time, I feel like it would balance out. The more people that would come for ecotourism, the more money would be generated from that issue. And I can't believe, my understanding was the Springs was submitted to become an outstanding spring with the state, which would bring in millions of dollars in grant money. There's other options I feel like that are available out there that we could use for over time improvements versus just a P3 with residential development, destroying all the land, building all kinds of buildings that are risky to the integrity of the property itself, the spring itself. It just seems like the P3 is a great risk with no guarantee versus using what's already there that we could model after other successful parks in the state. That's what I'm trying to say, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, very good. Great answer. I'm going to go to Chuck. It's a follow-up, the same thing. The funding of this whole thing has to be looked at, and if we're gonna use the 9 million in steps, we still have to come up with. It's right now the build out or the rebuild is $20 million, and that's really, I don't even think it's an accurate number on today's pricing. So at $20 million build out time, where do you think we're going to capture that money if it's not for the taxpayers?
Well,
Chuck?
I'm not disagreeing. I'm not disagreeing with any of that, except it depends upon the level you develop the area to. The higher the density, sure, probably, as far as that's concerned, as far as taxes. But that's not to the benefit of Warm Mineral Springs Park. And let's make this perfectly clear. It's not just the springs, it's 81 acres of Warm Mineral Park. That's at stake here. And we know that. And I don't think I answered your question, but the revenue sources there, and as far as that assessment, I think that was inflated at the time.
So you don't think the 20 million is actually accurate?
No, I don't think so. By the time we get around to it, probably.
Well, that's sort of like where we're heading, because we've owned this for a long time, and it was owned privately for a long time and very much neglected prior to us even owning it. So we're really in kind of a dire strait right now. And I'm going to slide over to Carmine, and I'm going to ask you the same question. How do we pay for this if it's not for the taxpayer?
Well, I mean, there's several different options if we're not going to do anything with taxes. I don't know if you want to look at raising the admission fees as being a tax or not. And if you do so, it's not going to be enough money. And my recommendation is that, one, you work in phases to remove the buildings, demolish one, and then rebuild one. And my order of preference, and I think everybody would probably agree with this, is what's most important right now is running sewer and putting in bathrooms. Because, you know, septic doesn't work, one. Every 4 or 5 days, it needs to be pumped out. That's at a cost. And when they do that, it closes the park, and that's not beneficial to anybody. And so having bathrooms, and right now we have, you know, the porta potties, so to speak, glorified, and that's costing us a lot of money. So the primary goal, number one, is to, with limited resources, is to replace the bathrooms and run sewer and water. And then as you follow on with the office and a gift shop and maybe even like a little luncheonette, and then the cyclorama for the historical nature of the springs.
Okay. Robin, I'm going to slide down to you. How do we keep this out of the hands through your vision? How do we keep this out of the hands of the taxpayers paying the burden of the cost?
Number one, I'm going to look at Welland Park as an example. It seems like everything is just generated over to Welland Park. It seems like the developers that are at Welland Park and have been with the city of Northport are getting a real break. So I would rethink on the developing end of it and increase what they're having to contribute to the city, since we seem to be giving away all of our property to them. Secondly, the Senate bill that I was talking about, which was introduced by Buchanan a couple of years ago, was for almost 1.5 million for the wastewater expansion, and that was withdrawn. I don't know why it was withdrawn, but the city should take a look at that and have that resubmitted and filed with the Senate. Additionally, there's historical and archaeological grants that are available that since those buildings were deemed historic, there's grants out there for that. I don't know how much money there's available for that, but every little bit helps. Every little bit where you can get grants from, which are available, and through different Senate bill and actions, everything helps. So yeah, you do it in phases. And the immediate concern is, I agree, is the bathroom facilities, shower facilities, and those also at the same time they do need a place to eat, and that even has to be upgraded, with the grease traps and all of that.
Very good. Thank you so much. I appreciate that, Robin. Peter, same question. How do we prevent the taxpayers from taking the burden on for paying for Warm Mineral Springs, even just the rehab side of it, where we get things going?
Okay, well, I guess I'm disagreeing with everybody, because what I'm hearing is spend, but no revenue. I would say put the brakes on. If you really want to do this, put the brakes on and give me a real budget. How much does it cost? Now, if you look at what staff gave the city, we're spending $100,000 over the last 3 years on landscaping and $60,000 on repairs. And I'm sorry, I did more in repairs in my house over the last 3 years than $60,000. And they're maintaining a park and the repairs. Something's funny here. I don't see where the $5.5 million they spent to buy it is recouped. So when people say we're making money, I don't buy it. I mean, I just don't buy that whole scenario. So if you're gonna charge me $40 more, I'd say no. I don't want to pay a dime. I think a small percentage of 80,000 Northport residents go to the spring. I say raise the price. Northport residents, get them in for $5. Everybody else, $75 or $100. If it's that great, let them pay for it. But it shouldn't come off the backs of the taxpayers.
Okay. So I'm going to go back to you, Robin, for a second, because you had mentioned something about the land being given, and just a quick follow-up there. What did you mean by the land we were giving to the
developers?
Well, yeah, the developers at Welland Park.
Because I've been involved with the city for a long time, trying to work with different organizations, especially Barbara's organization, on land conservation. I'm still waiting for the city to get a hold of Heron Creek and the land that was supposed to be set aside for the gopher tortoises and the scrub jays. It's been years, 20 years, waiting on that. Everywhere you look, it seems that the city, and I hate to say it, kisses the butt of the developers and the contractors. They should be, and we're just giving away our land, and we're increasing our density. Yes, I know we're a growing city, and the city is huge. But then I look to Welland Park, and I see what's going on at Welland Park, and that's like, what are we, the poor people of Northport, and Welland Park is now the rich people? Because they seem to be getting everything.
John,
so
can I
make money within our tax base if we go after the historical, the archaeological grants, the Senate bill that was introduced for the wastewater expansion, which was almost 1.5 million. There's money there. So I'm not looking to increase the admission rate just have an annual membership like we used to do back in the day in 2000 to 2009. We were very successful with our nature-based tourism activities. You also have the manatees who winter over in the creek. You can do a whole beautiful landscape and bridge that is on the property of the spring, so they can bring in winter attractions and money to see the manatees wintering there. There's a whole bunch of money to be made without taxing the people.
Very good. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. And I know that was kind of off topic, but drawn really nice back on topic by you. Thank you so much for that. Peter, you had a comment.
Yeah.
Start your clock. You got around a minute.
Okay. I hear what you're saying, Robin, and I get it. But we gave away 5,000 acres in Orange Hammock. Beautiful land. You know, I agree. The hammock itself of 2,000 acres, beautiful land. The rest of it was cow pasture. But we gave it away. That land was annexed into the city to assist us with a revenue base. So asking for more, we've got 5,000 acres. Use that. We're not using the land we have for the preservation. We've got more land preserved in this city than I can shake a fist at. It keeps costing us money. The parks are costing us money. And there's got to be a revenue source somewhere, or sell it and let the private sector run it. They ran it before. Everybody seemed to be happy with it. They all went bankrupt, but it was like, let somebody else run it then. Why put it on the backs of a small percentage of Northport residents that actually go to the spring? And that's it.
All right. Barbara, you were kind of shaking your head there.
Yes,
so I'm going to come
I want to say something about that, about the comment about acreage in the city. So I'm sure you've all seen the billboard on the interstate. Northport, 104 square miles of endless opportunity. 104 square miles is 65,000 or so acres. Within the city, 104 square miles, there is zero conservation land of any kind formally designated as that, with a conservation protection of any kind other than what the Conservancy owns, what private individuals are spending their own money on. So I don't agree that turning 62 acres of pristine parkland into residential or other brick and mortar current taxpayer owned parkland is in any way, shape, or form doing justice to our environment. Our spaces that we have, the Wyakahatchee Creek Park, the Greenway, Oaks Park, if you look at the current city maps, they are called open space. They are not conservation. Even the Warm Mineral Springs property is not conservation. So to talk about how the city is what they're doing with our land and what the parks cost, at the end of the day, do we really want 65,000 acres completely clear cut, built up, brick and mortared and asphalted? I hope not, which is why I continued to be a proponent of doing something with the existing parkland that will involve using the green space as it is now versus turning it into something else that's just going to be paved over. We're already doing that all over the city. Clear cutting is happening every single day right now as we're sitting here. Acres and acres are being knocked down. So I feel like environmental responsibility should be a part of the decision.
At what cost? That's the question.
At what cost?
At what cost?
Peter.
At whatever cost, because
Nope,
environmentally speaking, I think we're responsible to create a balance. That's what
I don't want to. I'm not going to accept at any cost. That's my tax dollars. You're telling me I don't have a.
No cutting in. There's no cutting in.
I think there's a lot of other things in the city that cost the taxpayers money.
Barbara,
I think.
I muted you both. Listen, everybody, we can't overtop each other. It's not one-sided here. I'm going to bring you both back on, but everybody stay calm, cool, and collected. We're going to have we have a lot of time left. So Chuck, I'm going to come over to you now and ask you the same question and let you reiterate on the side of the park and the conservatory side.
Really? I'm going to go back to the 2019 plan, which designated the entire 61 acres as a park. Okay, and I'm going to add that the majority of the commission, based on chats, right, believe our parks are nothing but a burden to the taxpayer, which means that's one of the reasons for wanting to turn them into P3s. And if they can turn Warm Mineral Springs into P3, they can do it to any park in the city. And I don't believe their crystal ball in 20 years could be accurate, because they don't know what the economic status of the city is going to be in 20 years. It's what they hope it'll be, but they don't know.
Okay. Is that all you have for that answer?
Well, that's basically it, because it's pretty well being covered as far as the aspect of why the cities focus so strongly on the P3s, because
Awesome.
they consider our parks a burden.
All right. Thank you. I'm going to go to Carmine to finish this roundup. I'm going to let you add in anything on the conservative side of the land and how you see it.
Well, I you from having meetings with the city in public. They're talking about putting in an environmental group, having a director, having employees to ensure that we balance the building, the growth, with preserving the environment. And to Barbara, only preserved or conserved land is the ones that private people buy or your group is doing it. I can tell you my development, Cypress Falls, right behind me is preserved land. They're not allowed to build on it. So there are some developments that are preserving land and looking out for the environment. I'm a big environmentalist, but I'm also, I don't want to be paying $20,000 a year in taxes as well. I think, you know, the parks, I don't think that the city wants to take a piece, convert all of the parks. They're talking about parks as being quality of life, like Central Park in New York. It's a quality of life. It's something that, you know, may or may not generate income, but it's there. And if we have good commercial tax base and we have, you know, residential tax base, and we're doing the right thing, we'll have enough money to be able to keep the park, because we all need the parks. It's a quality of life. It takes the stress off of people that work and have, you know, busy jobs and whatnot, and family life and so on and so forth. So that's my view. I hope I answered the question, John.
All right. Thank you. So I'm gonna start off with Robin this time, and you know, let's say we had the crystal ball that we all wish we had, and the buildings were all done, and Warm Mineral Springs was all completed. Okay, that crystal ball has to come in at some expense, and I'm looking for maybe compromise. Is there any compromise on the 61 acres being developed into something other than walking paths, as far as you're concerned, or is that something that, as a community member, that you're like really steadfast at?
No, I'm not steadfast on that, and I'm not, again, just representing myself. But I do have
Right.
experience with karst topographies. That's number one. There are never any guarantees, no matter how many surveys you will do. The surveys, even themselves, are risky on a karst topography because of the fissures that are underlying in the ground, and the underwater rivers that connect those fissures that eventually run into the springs, that again feed the surrounding creeks, that again feed into the Myagahatchee and the aquifer system. It's a very fragile parcel, as are the parcels in the whole community, but that one specifically. Additionally, we'll call it the burial pond. It's not just a spring, it's a burial pond. It's the ancestries of the Seminoles, the Calusas, the Miccosukees, all integrated. That's protected, but not really if you're going to put weight on the development of that 62 acres. I can go on and on about that, but to answer your question, the only thing that myself and the community that I'm representing would be happy with are pavilion type entities, paved pathways, the connection to the other pathways, what's that bike path? The bike path that they just
The
did.
Legacy Trail.
The
Legacy Trail.
Excuse me. My
Legacy
mind.
Trail, thank you.
The Legacy Trail connectors, maybe a small amphitheater for entertainment and wedding venues. My time is up, so I'll wait.
All right. Thank you. I appreciate that.
No
Peter,
problem.
I'm going to slide over to you. We're, you know, if that perfect picture was painted already, you know, and I'm going to ask this maybe just a tad different than I asked Robin, but that perfect scenario comes with the debt, because we all know we have to pay for it somehow. So take that in consideration. But how do we make that area? Is there any compromise as far as you're concerned on making that a doable parcel? You're mute. Hold on 1 second. I thought I muted you. Sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead, Peter. Hold on.
You're mute. Okay. Yep. I hear what you're saying. We ready? Yep. Okay. So I understand what you're saying. You know, I think we have to start by saying all developers don't destroy the land. If you think about it, if a developer were going to do something on that property and they destroyed the spring, the value of that property would plummet. There is no value. The only value it has to a developer is the spring itself. So they're going to do everything they can, I would believe, the right developer, to protect it. Look at, if you haven't been out to Babcock Ranch, go out there and take a look. That's a developer. And it was done with the environment in mind and the community in mind and the residents in mind. You can do it. And I've been in touch with a lot of developers. We talked about a boutique resort with a leading ecotourism architectural firm that's doing this all over the world. Why aren't we bringing that talent to the table and having a sit-down discussion? Everybody wants to protect it. Everybody wants to see it self-sustaining. So how do we get there? And the answer is by sitting around a table and figuring it out and put the right people around that table. The one thing I don't agree with is it doesn't belong in the backs of the taxpayers. The city made a decision, and if you look at the records and go to the June 14th, I think it is, 2014 meeting, which is when the county essentially told the city, we want out of this, okay? The county was saying what I'm saying, let's make sure it doesn't become a tax burden. And the city was saying, or some members of the city commission were saying, make it a park. Well, the city won. We made it a park. And guess what? It's a tax burden now. Now the only way they can fix it is by taxpayer money or a P3. So let's put the right people around the table, have an intelligent conversation, and come to a solution. If we can't, then sell it back to the private sector. Get it off the books and let's move on with something else.
All right, Barbara, same question back to you. If that perfect scenario was laid out, is there any compromise on the 61-acre parcel as far as you're concerned?
No. I think that the areas that have already been touched by man, that are already mowed, that are already sodded, that already have buildings on it, are the only places on that land that should continue to support any kind of brick and mortar. They've been there a long time, whether they are remodeled, upgraded, added on to, whatever. I feel there's plenty of space already that has brick and mortar on it that can be revamped or reutilized. There's no need to add more. There's no need to clear cut any more land. That's just adding to the problem on a daily basis of wiping out our environment. I do want to say I question the cost of utilities, because my understanding is currently the idea would be for the Warm Mineral Springs money to pay for utilities to be brought in. And I'm not understanding or not certain why that wouldn't be a utilities department expense to take that off the top of the cost total, but that's a whole different conversation. And calling it a tax burden,
Say bluff. Thank you.
I'm not certain how I feel about that. I feel like that's a little bit of a loaded statement, because there's a lot of other things that cost the city money, um, besides the springs. I kind of take it being called as a tax burden as possibly a way to convince people to be in favor of a P3 versus against it. Um, I've seen all kinds of conflicting information, conversation, printouts, reports. Some say it makes money, some say it doesn't. The truth lies somewhere in the middle. There's a way to revamp the budget, move money around. Where there's a will, there's a way to keep it all in-house and use city money to improve taxpayer property. We've already paid for it, so why would we want to give it away?
Thank you.
And that's
Chuck,
all that I have.
questions to you. Same question. As far as the 61 acres, is there any compromise that you would set forth on the 61 acres?
Well, I don't understand what you mean by compromise. You mean compromise between the proposed P3 and the 2019 plan? Is that what the compromise lays?
Well, if there were any compromises that you as an individual would see put into play, is there anything acceptable to you?
Well, I guess I'm pretty stuck on the 2019 plan. Okay, it was vetted, it was sounded out, it had public hearings, it had a survey, it was established, but it wasn't good enough for the changing tide of economic development. That's basically it.
Okay. Carmine, are there any compromises that you see happening with the 61 acres?
Well, I've always said the beauty of the Springs, not have enough, convention centers here or meeting places here in Northport. I know you look on Facebook, you look on Nextdoor, people are always looking for, does anybody know of a good place to hold a wedding or to have a 50th anniversary? So about the only thing I would think of is if you had a place that can hold 120 people, you can have, rooms upstairs for meetings, and then downstairs have like a catering hall where they can bring a caterer in to bring food in and then have weddings there. I think that would be an economic driver. That would help. That's about the only thing I would see there. Again, it all depends on the study phase that need to be taking place. I agree with Peter that a developer isn't going to do a half-assed job of, lying about a survey and then investing all that money and then with return on investment. And if he did something wrong, that spring dries up or that spring collapses, he just lost his major investment. So I think they have a real skin in the game. I mean, without developers and stuff, I wouldn't have a roof over my head. So the bottom line is, something's got to give. There's got to be some compromise. So,
all right, I appreciate that. Good answer. I appreciate that. So, we've got about 6 minutes left. We've kind of blown through an hour real quick. And this is actually how many people, and I'm going to start with you, Barbara. Do you think that, and keep your answer like down to 15, 20 seconds. How many people in Northport utilize the springs that are citizens of Northport? That you talk to?
Well, I couldn't give you a number, but especially since this all came to pass with the P3 and the public starting to speak out, I don't know. I probably talked to 100, 150, maybe more people just in my travels and different events or different in the sidewalk and the grocery store. There's quite a lot of people. I've never tried to count, but it seems to me that it is a well-utilized destination.
Okay, Peter, how many people that are in your background that you talk to? How many people utilize the park?
I'm going to guess maybe 1,000, and that's a pure guess of my circle. And I've got a pretty wide circle. Nobody.
Okay.
Nobody that I know in Northport uses the springs with any frequency at all, if ever.
Robin, I'm going to ask you the same question.
Okay, I can counteract that. As you know, Peter, I helped Ed run the Springs.
Yes.
From 1999 to 2009. We had marketing activities. We had everything that was blasted out for product lines. We had events. We had spa services. We had everything going on, which was bringing in millions of dollars a year. We had the whole Sarasota spiritual community within that. So I would say there was more than 3,000 people on a regular basis, in addition to the Warm and Earl Springs surrounding community.
Northport resident.
Properly, and you have proper services available.
Okay, so 3,000 roughly. Carmine, same question. 3,000 residents, right?
Yeah.
So,
I looked at the outcry when the pool was put in, and now I'm looking at the outcry of Warm Mineral Springs. I mean, you're not going to be able to please everybody. I don't know a lot of people that use the springs. I know, I've heard next door where people complain that it stinks and it's just a hole in the ground. I know it's more than that. Okay, I can appreciate the medicinal and the spiritual benefits of it. A lot of the surrounding community, a lot of Sarasota unincorporated use that spring. That's why I earlier do the ad valorem with Sarasota County. You're now using the entire county to help pay for that.
all right, let's slide over to Chuck. How many people that are in your circle utilize that? Are you still in that? Are you, like with Robin, are you in that 3,000 category?
No, absolutely not. As a matter of fact, I couldn't tell you how many people utilize the springs, but I think it relates more to the amount of trips made to the springs, not necessarily the volume of people. And if the springs wasn't so profitable, or they didn't believe it was profitable, there wouldn't be the pressure to maximize its potential as it relates to an economic driver. And all the amenities that Carmine mentioned would be facilitated once they run the water and sewer, and it would connect to 7A, which they plan a museum, a hotel, and across the road where all that land on the other side is destined to be something called West Springs, from what I'm hearing.
All right.
But it's a matter of
thank you for your answer. I wanted to make sure I thanked everybody for participating. This was nothing rehearsed. You guys, I appreciate every point of view that you had, and I actually appreciate the fact I'm running out. I'm running out of time, Bill. I've got to get off the air. All right.
It needs to go
but hang tight. Hang tight. If it went to referendum, I think it would be a complete disaster. But that's just what I've heard, even from the commission side of things. So let's. I love the civilness of this whole conversation. I think it's good to have open dialogue like this, where we can go back and forth. There's a good amount of people out there on both sides of this topic. That Warm River Springs is one of the hottest topics that's happening in Northport right now. And I appreciate each and every one of your point of view. And thank you for your time. Just hang in for a second on the live stream. I'm going to go ahead and sign off of the radio station. This is John Rawlings with WKDW Radio 97.5 FM and KDWRadio.com. Thank you for your time. And on Monday, where I'll be back in Northport and ready to go. We'll talk to you guys soon. Be safe and drive home carefully. Bye-bye now. So we're still live on the air, just so you guys know. We're live on Facebook and Twitter. We've had some good interaction with people out there, and it's funny. Bill, you said put it at a referendum. I'm going to take your question real quick, and because you said that, I already know where you stand. Carmine, do you think it should go to a referendum? Yes or no?
If it does, you said it before, it'll be a disaster because there's a lot of people. There's 82,000 people here, and the same thing with the master plan in 2019. Only 200 responded out of 82,000. So I wouldn't go with a referendum if you want to do anything, want to prevent anything from happening.
Robin, same question.
I can't speak to the success of a referendum. I can just remind everybody that this is a sacred site. You shouldn't even be looking at it in the first place. Not even in the first place. There is no other place like this in the world, let alone the United States. It's an archaeological historic gem. Stay the heck off of it. That's my take on it. Go
Peter,
up to 41.
Yep. Peter, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, if it's going to be a park, I say, and it's going to be, taxpayers are going to pay for it, then I say absolutely put it to the referendum. And I just have to make a comment from one of your people who are writing in here. The public can't go in those developments of Babcock. There's 70,000 acres of preserved land that you can go into. It's a state park. So I just wanted to respond to that comment.
All right, very good. Barbara, do you think it should go to a referendum?
Yes, and I'll tell you why. Because it frustrates me that the same statement keeps being made over and over again, that only 50 to 100 people are speaking out. It's the same people all the time. When really the reality is lots of people have opinions. It's all over social media. Myself, Robin, a bunch of our colleagues, Chuck, we talk to hundreds of people. A lot of our other colleagues do too. But unfortunately, not everybody comes to meetings. Not everybody wants to leave their home and go give public comment. There's yet been doors open to City Hall to allow people to come and speak. And I think a lot of times what happens is I might talk to 25 people. Robin talks to 25 people. They figure we're going to speak for them so they don't have to. So to continue to say only 50 to 100 people came out for the 2019 plan, nobody knows how many conversations were had before those 50 to 100 people decided to be the ones that showed up to speak out. So a referendum would allow everyone to give their voice. And I think that would be fair because then there's no question.
All right. Well,
has everybody on this call taken the survey from the city about what they want the Springs?
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, I
All
guess
right,
we should
well-
say that, right? There's a city survey out there. Please take it. And
Yeah,
please read
please
it
take it.
carefully because some of the questions are not straightforward and are a little confusing and so take your time.
And 5,000 hand-picked mailers.
Well, I don't know about the handpick side, but however they picked them, they did. So
Can I answer to that? Because I had a
Sure.
conversation with the city and the,
Sure.
okay. So it is my understanding as far as what the city's procedure was with this firm, that they sent the firm a GIS map of the city of Northport. And on that map, it was up to the firm to randomly select, I don't know how to say it, but to randomly select the sections that are within the city that would best represent the community as a whole. So I guess this section has older people, let's get a little of them. This section has more families, let's get a little section of them. That's the way it was explained to me. And the reason that they did the mailings in conjunction with the online survey is because 50 times I could fill out that survey. And that's the answer I got. 50 times Robin could be completing that survey. So really it's not Robin, it's not 50 people, it's just Robin. So I can kind of understand the mailings. I just question where the mailings are actually going to. Like who picked those sections? Was it really, just on the firm's end, or was there some direction given to the firm? Oh, pick that section, or pick that section. I don't know yet. Gonna have to wait till we see the tally.
So the consensus of this group
Yeah.
was it should go to referendum.
Yeah,
I didn't
actually,
ask the
the
question.
consensus
I
is
was
pretty much
concerned
good about.
about people forgetting about what Warm Mineral Springs property really is, what it represents, not just to us, but you got the whole native indigenous peoples. That's their pond. That's their ancestors. You don't mess with that. You just don't mess with something like that.
And Robin, I don't think anybody is challenging that. You know I don't. You know how I
I
feel.
understand everybody's
Okay.
concerned about the pond, but the surrounding topography and the cheese-like topography of that is unstable. I don't care how many surveys you do. There are never any guarantees that 2 years down the road, 5 years down the road, there's a fissure that opens up because of a weight of something on that property. And it
Yeah.
opens up the fissures, opens up the flow, and everything is messed up then. You don't mess
And I
with
just want to be really, I want to be really clear because I agree with everything everybody is saying. I just don't believe it belongs in government's hands to pay for it. If you want to preserve it, put a fence around it and treat it like Little Salt Springs. Okay, people shouldn't be going into it if it's that sensitive. If that area is so sensitive, block it off. But who pays for it? That's my question.
It's sensitive, Peter, and I didn't mean to interrupt you, so I apologize. However, the spring has been operating in the same capacity since the 40s.
Privately, not publicly.
Okay, but
Privately. So that's a private developer's decision to do.
The problem with privatizing it is, look what the Herons did with, let's make it a beach, let's try and make it more appealing. And all that sand, when we took it over, all that sand was dumped in the springs. We spent so much money trying to clear out the sand from that spring and trying to stabilize the banks from people entering it in at all, all areas around the springs. Hundreds of thousands of dollars just to clean up the spring.
Yeah, but understand what, for people that don't know it, the history to that, and Robin, you've been around, like me for a long time on this spring. That was owned privately. The owner of the property defaulted, and the company that held the money, that held the mortgage, came back in and managed it to keep it alive for a little bit and put it up for sale.
Correct.
And the city and the county agreed to purchase it because of its economic impact. They didn't spend $5.5 million, and at least they didn't tell us we're spending $5.5 million of taxpayers' money to get a park. So that was what they said they were going to do with it. Then it shifted and things happened that were changed. But I don't know of anybody that's going to spend $5.5 million to buy parkland. You can use that money in better ways. And then you've got the burden cost of it. So that's my biggest concern with it. I think it's a losing proposition. I think it belongs in private hands, or close it up and put a fence around it and take a $5.5 million loss and say, okay, we're doing good for the environment. Let's leave it alone. Nobody goes in it. And we have to do nothing to it. Let it just overgrow itself and go back to nature.
It's frustrating because you say nobody goes in it. And you're correct as far as the non-Eastern European.
I'm sorry, I have to interrupt. I have to log off. I have a previous engagement. You all.
Okay.
It was nice meeting and talking with you, Carmine. All right, I'm going to have to interject because the non-Eastern European cultures, they don't use the spring water. They don't believe in the balneology and the medicinal effects it has on the human body and the importance. However, right now, it's just vacant land on that parcel. It's not being utilized correctly with nature-based tourism activities. If we were to develop that and have those available, then you bringing in a whole group of people. Forget about the tours, the educational aspect of the whole spring itself. Forget about what's going to happen to our children's children as we just keep giving our land over to the developers and decreasing our park space.
Yeah, but I'm saying take that whole thing and block it all off then. We spent $5.5 million to buy a piece of land that has no economic value. Nobody's shown me a plan that shows any economic value where it pays for itself.
It does pay for itself.
It doesn't.
It does pay for
I
itself.
don't believe it does.
It does pay for itself. It's been very successful versus what the aquatic center is costing.
But Robin, they don't repair anything. They have no expenses. That's why it pays for itself. Now you got $20 million in expenses.
Okay, if they went with the original 2019 plan and they started doing it when they were supposed to in phases, it would be half the money. That's number one. So something should have been started way back then.
Yeah, I agree, but they didn't. Like Price Boulevard.
So now you're in this hole. So why do we, the citizens, have to face the burden? It's the representation of the city that should face the burden and make it work in any way possible.
And that's what they're trying to do with the P3.
Increasing developer expenses and making them pay for some of this instead of putting everything on the taxpayers.
They're trying to do that with a P3. I think they've got the wrong P3, but that's another story.
They can negotiate the P3 and move them up to 41 and Ortiz.
No, they can't. They can't. The city has no equity on 41. It's got no land. It's got nothing that it contributes to the package for a P3. Usually a P3 means the city is giving something and the developer is giving something. That's why it's a partnership.
Instead of getting a right out answer of no, and the city upholding the 2019 master park-like plan, which they should be doing in the first place, they should just be saying, sorry, developer, we're upholding the 2019 plan. We shouldn't have even accepted your P3 in the first place when it was properly vetted. That's the whole problem. So now we're in this mess because it was accepted. Now we're in this mess. Now we have to find ways to do A, B, C, and D to the Springs parcel when we shouldn't have to in the first place if the 2019 plan was instituted and done in phases. We would never be where we are. But since we're now here, go after the grants, get more money, redo, and tell the developer, here, we got a parcel up here. Look at that parcel because you're not doing it on the Springs property. Annex the whole place between Ortiz and Welland Park and annex it into the city of Northport, which it should be in the first place.
That's what they're going to do.
To have that warm Mineral Springs community split in half. And those are the people who have been keeping the springs open since the 40s, who bought property based upon the spring, where the whole city of Northport was developed around that spring. And
No, that's not true. That portion maybe that portion, but not the whole city. That's a small section of the city. It's a small section of the city. It's not a.
But you don't just now turn your back on it and say, okay, let's just mess with this property and risk sinking the spring.
Yeah.
You don't do that because if you can do it there, and all of a sudden the University of Miami says, you know what, we're done with this Little Salt Spring, like they
are done. They've
been saying. Yeah. So now what are you going to take that 110 acres and let's put up some buildings there and maybe collapse that spring also?
If you listen to this show
going on here with the city.
If you listen to John's show, one of the things I talk about all the time is where is the plan for the city? Show me the plan. Show me what the city is going to look like 10 years from now, 15 years from now, 20 years from now. There is nobody I've met in the city who can show me that. They'd show me the comp plan. The comp plan is just code. That's not a plan. It's not a visual plan that the average consumer can look at and the resident can say, this is what my city is going to look like. I don't mind paying those dollars. But right now we're on a path and the commissioners are speaking about it openly on the dais. Ad valorem is going up. Get ready. Get ready for the ride.
As a citizen, I would not really have any problem with paying a little bit more if I knew that a little more green space was going to be preserved.
Yeah, but
the city, the more land you take away from the city, the sicker the citizens get, and that's been a study that's been all over the world.
Okay, let me give you a firsthand real story that happened to me. I used to live on Long Island. I got recruited to work for AT&T in Basking Ridge, New Jersey. So they paid for me to relocate out there. So they gave me a realtor and they showed me homes. And the homes were $250,000 that they were showing me. This is back in 1979. I said, what are you, nuts? I said, I live on Long Island in a place called Brightwaters, which is a very upscale community. I was 3 blocks from a private beach, 3 blocks from a private canal. I was on 3/4 of an acre. I had a 14-room house with a wraparound porch. It was gorgeous. And that house, I had an option to buy it for $75,000. You know what she said to me? You live in a depressed housing market. Grumman Aerospace left Long Island. And they took with it the entire aerospace industry. That tax base left. My sister out on the east end of Long Island was paying over $12,000 a year in taxes. They never reduced the taxes, they stabilized. But they were going through the roof. So if you've got $2,000 to spend on a mortgage, taxes, and insurance, and $1,000 of it is for your taxes, you're left with $1,000 on your mortgage and your insurance. So what do? You have to buy less. The price of homes went down. That can happen.
Yeah, and I totally get where you're coming from, and I totally understand the fiscal aspect of it. However, again, we would not be in this boat if they would have.
We keep doing it. We keep going into the bad past and saying what should have been done. Let's do something. Right. Let's sit down and come up with.
Here's the thing to do. Get the money from all these developers that are taking away all the land, and the city seems to be just appeasing them and saying, yeah, here you go. Have that parcel, have those thousands of acres. We don't need this, we don't need that. They're not paying enough impact fees, number one, the developers.
The developers won't build here. They'll go somewhere else. They've got tons of places they can go. This is not the only place in the world where they can develop. If you're not,
why is everybody moving to the city of Northport? Come on.
That can change real quick. If the developers
real quick because we're running out of space.
If they pull out,
the state of Florida. How many people a day come to the state of Florida? How many people are in Sarasota County? Guess what? Overdeveloped. Now you're coming to Northport. Guess what's going to happen to Northport? It'll be a parking lot if citizens don't stand up for our green space and say enough is enough. We need the green space. We need the wildlife. We need everything that comes along with natural habitats in order to have a healthy community, because without it, you have a sick community and you have people moving away.
I also need restaurants. I need a place to go. I need a place for my kids to go. I need entertainment. I need a lot of other things.
Developing Welland Park and forgetting about Northport. Like, what the hell's up with that?
That was a
to Welland Park. And that was a Northport. Oh, wait. Let me get another mattress store. Let me get another car wash. It's ridiculous.
Your zoning doesn't prohibit. If somebody wants to go in, the city can't say we have enough mattress stores. I hear what you're saying. But when you come down to it, we put a plan together in 2012 that in 1 year we put this together. And the reason we're able to do it is we had the people that can make the decisions. They were CEOs sitting around the table. Okay? And we had 3 hospital CEOs. Northport keeps talking about we need a hospital, we need a hospital. What have you been doing for the last 20 years to get one? How many hospital CEOs are you talking to? So we had those guys sitting around the table. The only thing I could get them to agree with is a teaching hospital. Okay, because they're not going to share their markets with everybody, but they all agreed we need staff, we need nurses, we need doctors. So the 2 things we got what we were considering was a teaching hospital, and one of the CEOs knew the people at Shands, University of Florida, and they were interested in coming down here. The second was telehealth, where they're doing one of the CEOs was telling me Englewood Hospital, their trauma center is in North Carolina or something. They have brain surgeons sitting at a high-tech room, and they can see the sweat on the brow. So they can tell the doctor who's in that emergency room what to do. He's got the expert online. It's all video. It's very, very high quality. And they're taking care of people in those critical moments. Well, why can't we have one of those places in Northport? Why can't we
Because
have
of the
that on Toledo Blade? Those are the kind of things we were looking at. We generated $700 million in new construction and over 1,500 new jobs.
I think Chuck wants to, oh, Chuck just left?
Okay.
All right. Oh, there you are.
Okay. Anyway, you can do this though, but you got to get the right people sitting around a table.
Okay.
Go ahead, Chuck. No, you.
You're muted. We can't hear you.
I just want to jump in and say I have to go too.
Okay.
So thank you guys for your time. I
Okay.
appreciate it. And everybody have a good day.
You too. You gotta go too. Have a good one.
Take care.
Okay.
The certificate of need was the biggest obstacle to the hospital.
That's what everybody thought. That's not the issue.
No,
You know what the issue was in Northport? And this was told me by CEOs of hospitals. Northport has too much indigent care. That's the problem.
I remember that part too.
Okay.
Sadly,
Too
I have
much
to go
indigent
too.
care. So they're going where the money is. The money is in Venice and Sarasota. Okay. Now it's changed. Now it's changed. So,
bye, Robin.
Oh, bye, Chuck.
Okay, I'm gonna go to.
Are you gonna stay? Or are you gonna go too, Peter?
No, I'm gonna go to. We'll have this conversation again.
Everybody.
Great conversation. Great conversation. Thank you all.
Okay, bye-bye.
All right, bye.
Bye.
How do you sign off?
I don't know. I'm trying to figure
Oh,
that
there
out.
it is. Leave the studio on the bottom. On the bottom. Bye.
Bye. On the bottom.